These are really bad selections. But whatever, I'm not trying to do this for anything special other than, well, you guys are special. You're watching this, so that makes you special. Short bus special. Styrofoam helmet wearing. Okay, so if you may have noticed, my selections get smaller as they get further away from the light. This is a general rule of thumb. Organic shapes, because they have 3 dimensions, can't have light equally shown on every angle of it. Since the light's coming from, God, I've got to stop pointing with my finger. Since the light's coming from this direction, and his face and his head are rounded, you gotta imagine that this is a sphere, not a circle, or a Gambit head. You know, so his face is going to have form. His hair is going to have form. This is a really big bunch of bouffant hair that's going to be sticking out. So the sides here are going to get less and less light as they go across. Up here, tons of light. I don't even want that. I'm going to just take that out. Now, this is where I'm going to get confusing. Bear with me. I don't have a good way of explaining this. I tend to pick a color that is opposite of the mood I'm trying to set. Like, he would be hanging out in a dank bar or whatever. So a lot of people would tend to use blue, you know, to really just kind of set that dark mood. Now, for me, that shaded color that sets the mood should be the light shining down from the moon on him. So in the shadows, I'm going to pick something that's contrary to that blue, which would be like a red color. I know that's not color palette contrary, but yellow, not a good shadow color. So I'm going to pick a dark color here. Go back to our paint bucket, and this is where I get a little weird. I go to multiply. Now multiply, opposite of your layers, which makes it transform into like a see-through layer. This is actually going to make things darker when it comes to the paint bucket. That's why I set up at 20% opacity. Now the opacity at 20%, if you say opacity, I don't care. At the 20% opacity, you have options. 1 click is going to give you that. 2 clicks, 3 clicks, 4 clicks. And you're going to see that you have choices. You know, you don't have to keep changing your colors to try and find, oh, well, this color, this shadow doesn't look right. I'm going to have to pick a different color and try that one and try that one and try that one. Just keep clicking until you find a shade that you like. Okay, that's a little bit extreme. Also found an area that bad selection. Generally, I don't care if there's a bad selection, if it's just a piece of personal art. But when they stand out, they stand out. And that's kind of attention I should have been paying on the Tsunade one when I gave her pancake boob. So go back in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7 looks good. A little dark, but it works. And there's too much light up here because this is the back of his head. It shouldn't be getting that much light. So once again, bad selection, but we're going to go back in and cover that up. Now when you do your multiply, make sure you kind of keep a count of how many clicks you did if you can't eyeball the difference, because then you're going to have a separation here and it's going to look like crap. So just kind of keep track of how many paint fills you did. Once again, selecting a various one color in various areas. Now, even though I don't draw a lot of detail in here, I use color to define shapes, because not everything in real life has an outline. And even though we're drawing in a cartoony style here, you can still throw real world into there because the rules still apply, even on a cartoony style. So you notice the neck, whatever the hell this is, trim, bends in slightly. Arbitrary thing I did when I was inking it, but it's still there in the final art, so we're going to have to make use of that. Because this bends in slightly, your light's coming down, you're going to get a slight lip of light on this piece. Because with this piece curving down, this piece curving in, you're going to have a fold over in here. Now you don't want too much, and you don't want it to hug the trim here, because this trim, if you want it to feel three-dimensional, has to cast a shadow. It's just the way of the world. Now because there's nothing behind him, you can give him a little ring of light. Doesn't have to be much. And later on, if you feel like it, you can throw in a secondary light source that's a little bit softer, like a reflective light. Like maybe there's a bar sign behind them that's red and it's going to cast a red on him. I'm not going to get into that. We're just doing basics right now. So once again, this part is a fold. It has a bit of a shape to it, so it's going to stick out. Now this is where I get unifying. I tend to use the same shading color all over, just in different degrees, because once it mixes with your base flat colors, the shading is slightly different. You add a little bit more brown than you have red up in here. See how that works? It's too much brown. So even though I'm using the same shading color, same settings, it comes out differently because the multiply mixes with your previous layer. Now the best way to figure out how to shade three-dimensionally into a two-dimensional drawing when you're cell shading, study real life. You know, look around at something, look at a jacket, somebody sitting in front of you in class or on the bus or whatever. The light hitting their clothing or on their hair, on their face, can easily translate into a cartoony style. You just have to basic it down. You know, in this case, you don't have to do all the texturing that would be on a normal trim of a leather jacket because of all the aging and wear and tear. You could, but you don't have to. You know, you just get that general feeling that this thing is three-dimensional and it reads. And that's the best part about doing this style of artwork, is that a lot of people think, well, it's cartoony, it doesn't have to follow the rules. Well, it kind of does, or else it just doesn't make sense to the brain and you're interpreting way too much. And once you interpret too much, the first impact of that drawing is gone.